Welcome to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. My name is Charles Laux, and I'm your host. I am here today with a very special guest. This is Mr. Brad Pfeil. Brad is one of the orchestra directors at Neuqua Valley High School outside of Chicago in Naperville, Illinois. And he and I go way back to both of our first year teaching back in 1996 out in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we taught together for quite a few years, and we were able to build our friendship and become pretty strong colleagues. And we've spent a lot of time together at ASTA conferences and everything else in Midwest. So I want to welcome Mr. Brad Pfeil. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, thanks, Chuck. So great to be here with you today.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Just wanted to, let the audience get to know you a little bit. And we're going to talk. We were talking the other day, kind of out of the blue, and it's been a while. And then all of a sudden, you're telling me about all this great stuff you're doing at your school, with the technology and your remote teaching. And so I was like, well, we got to get you on the podcast and let everybody hear about all this great stuff. So, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and your instrument, and where you went to school, and kind of your career in a nutshell, so we can kind of get to know you a little bit better.
All right, great. Yeah, well, I grew up in Westland, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Went to the University of Michigan, studied bass performance and education. Headed out to Las Vegas, where I got to meet Chuck. Played in the Las Vegas Philharmonic out there, taught at Las Vegas High School and Fremont Middle School. That was my first job as well. But after 11 years there, moved back to the Midwest here to Naperville, Illinois, where I'm one of 3 orchestra directors at Neuqua Valley High School. Wow. I've got a really great, thriving program with about 250 students in it, which is just fantastic. And I also play bass with the Heartland Festival Orchestra in Washington, Illinois. So I love to keep playing as much as I can as well.
Absolutely. It's always nice to be able to do that, and definitely a challenge when you're so busy, with your high school program. So tell us about the courses that you teach at your high school. I know you said you have 3 orchestra teachers. So how do you guys divvy up your responsibilities, and what are you teaching any other classes besides orchestra?
Yeah, so what I teach our 3 freshman orchestras. We have a freshman campus, and so it's a really good opportunity for us to really make sure the students sort of leave that freshman year with some basic understanding of concepts that we want them to have. And so I'm sort of the gatekeeper, I guess, before they go on to our 5 main building courses. So one of those freshman orchestras is an audition group, and the other 2 are ability-based but non-audition.
Great.
And I do also run our Wildcat Fiddlers, which is an extracurricular fiddle group.
Cool. And then you guys do a lot of extra performances with that group?
With the fiddle group, we do about four sort of big performances each year, like a spectacular concert, a world music concert, a Fiddle Fest concert, and then some nursing homes and local performances like that. So
nice to get out in the community and do that. And then what kind of, obviously it's a fiddle group, so, and you said you do world music, so where do you get those resources? Or is it something that you write, or are there some tunes that you found that work well for instance, world music is something that I am not really well versed in at all.
Right. Well, and I say world music, it's a world music concert, so most of the music on that we take from Irish fiddling, for example.
Got it. Okay.
Or something like that. But we'll even do. We did My Shot from Hamilton. 2 years ago.
It's a great arrangement.
Yeah. So even American music is still world music. So
that's right.
Do as much as we can. But I'm always looking for great Norwegian fiddle tunes. I mean, there's such a wealth out there of untapped fiddle music that I wish there was more arrangements of. So I do end up doing quite a few of my own arrangements.
I was going to say
well,
you've got a couple of things published. What some of the pieces you published are through Alfred and anywhere else?
Just Alfred. Yeah, and one of those is a Scottish air called Dark Island, which is a fiddle tune that I often do with my fiddle groups. So
that's cool. And what other pieces have you published with them?
I've got the slow movement from Mahler 1 string arrangement, and then I have two easy full orchestra tunes. One is a New World Symphony finale, and the other one is Chester. And those were just done as I was looking through the library of beginning full orchestra stuff. There's just not a whole lot out there for that first entrance into the full orchestra experience. So,
absolutely, that was always my challenge. I had a youth orchestra I did for the Georgia Youth Symphony Orchestra, and I think the toughest job on that was more so than having the students be in full orchestra for the very first time was selecting music and finding appropriate tunes for them that would work. For that level of string players, I had kids that were Suzuki kids that could play anything but couldn't read very well, and then I had all these wind players who were kind of a mix of ability levels. So that was always a challenge, and it's we need more of that, and the better literature we have out there, the more the better chances of orchestra directors being able to start full orchestra at a younger age. I think that's one of the downfalls is just there's not that much out there, so people are kind of hesitant or afraid to start. So great.
Yeah.
Great. So tell us about your situation, at Neuqua Valley. You said you had told me that you guys have not gone back face to face at all, and you've been virtual this whole time since March. Tell us a little bit about your situation and maybe some of the solutions and downfalls or issues that that have made it difficult for you.
Sure. Yeah, we've been remote since March 13th.
Yep.
I guess it was the day before Pi Day. My room still has Pi symbols on it from
oh my
a friend of
gosh.
mine who attacked me with Pi. But yeah, so I think like a lot of people when we realized we were starting this year remote or even hybrid, we were all sort of scrambling as to how we're going to make the most of this. And I think in general, we as music teachers are very resourceful and have adapted well, and I think supported each other on social media. There are a lot of groups that are offering ideas and support. And I think in general, we just tend to sort of work together and reach out to each other. But one of the first things that stuck out to me was, with this whole hybrid situation, I don't know which instruments I'm going to have on any given day in the room, and
it's a hodgepodge.
So my mind immediately went to some of these flexible arrangements that have, the violinist has all four parts, the violist has all four parts.
Oh yeah.
Cellist. So no matter who was in the room, we could still have a 4-part arrangement. And I've actually learned, I think, some things from this experience. I think one of them is that I'm going to do this type of thing every year because it's really great for kids to get to experience the melody. As a bass player,
Sure.
I always appreciate that. But also, the inner voices, that we often don't get to play as bass players. And
right. No, that's a good point. I've always been a fan of chorales because you can do that a little bit, and there's some chorales that are made for everybody gets to can try different parts, but in literature not necessarily. So you're right. This is a really great opportunity.
So that was sort of my first go-to. The other go-to that I've been using are rounds. And there's a great book that Louis Borgonzi put together of rounds.
Yes.
And the nice thing about that, well, let me back up. Our district, we were very lucky, paid for Soundtrap for every student.
Wow.
Soundtrap is a recording studio, I guess you would call it, similar to like a garage band, but a little more basic level, which for the kids is really good. But and so that's how we've been.
That's completely on. That's a completely online, software, right? There's no software to download.
Correct. Yeah. So it's all online. So that's the way the kids have been recording most of their assignments throughout the year. Soundtrap does allow them to collaborate as well. So I could assign, 4 violinists to a project that becomes like a Google Doc, and they each can add and
Mm-hmm.
create somewhat of an ensemble there as well. But one of the neat things about the rounds is that it also enables them to sort of create music with themselves.
Right, right.
Themselves. It's not a word. Themselves, and so all they have to do is get the round right once, and then they can copy and paste and create up to a 4-part round, which is neat.
That's
I mean,
fantastic.
it does show a lot of rhythmic deficiencies in students, and it can be frustrating for a lot of these kids who have difficulty playing individually with a steady tempo. And,
Right, right.
so it is, I would not say that every student is crazy about Soundtrap, but I do think
Sure.
it's sort of, we're making the best of the situation
Right.
that we can.
Does it allow for a click track or a metronome in there at all?
Yeah, so there's a metronome that they can play
Mhm.
along with.
Great.
And pretty much every assignment that I give, I'm also recording a track for them to play along with, especially my lesser experienced students, because
Yeah.
they are used to having a stand partner, and a leader up front. And so I don't think it's necessarily cheating to give them me playing the violin along with them,
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of us who are doing recording are realizing that this is a different type of performance art, and there's the live performance art where kids are playing together, they're spontaneous, they're making adjustments on the fly because they hear something, they listen to it, and they hear it. But when they're playing by themselves with a click track, whether or not they feel like they're playing with other people, they're playing by themselves, and they're having to adhere to a very strict beat, and a strict tempo, and there's no wiggle room, and I told my students, I said, listen to a recording from last year and try and clap along to it or set a metronome to it. You're going to see how much we vary, as much as we don't want to. But you can't do that when you're playing with a recording and with a click track. You have to adhere. So this is a new standard, and I almost think in some ways it's asking them to play at a higher level and more independently. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do, and I think I've found myself as well. I'll be playing along, and I'll go back and listen and say, "Wait, that's not with the metronome." This program must be wrong. And gosh, I don't know if you thought this throughout the course of this either, but like, how do professional musicians record an album without going crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, it is such an art form that I've really gained a lot of respect for throughout this project. Just getting one good take of something is very challenging.
It definitely is, and we're our biggest critic, so and we're putting it out there for our kids, so we can't we can't miss notes or flub rhythms or whatever, and we want them to be able to adhere that same standard. So yeah, it's challenging, and I've had to step away from the mic, if you will, a few times to take a break and get a cup of coffee and then come back and try and do it again, because especially when we're playing our secondary instruments, I mean, I just remember playing some bass tracks, as easy as they are. It's like, man, my intonation is not good, or my tone isn't where I want it to be, and I feel like I need to practice my secondary instruments more to get them to be really, really, really strong.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same exact way as I was recording, because I'm probably like you in that my room here is I've got a violin, viola, cello, and a bass all in here, and it's been fun, fun putting together a track of me playing all 4 parts. But like you said, sometimes I wish the intonation on my violin was a little better,
It's we all do, I think. It's one of those things, but it does keep us in check too. And I think it's important that our kids know that we can perform on all these instruments and be able to cover their parts.
Yeah. And I think the other important thing too, I told the students this, and I tell myself this, is don't be a perfectionist with this assignment. If there's a note that you're not happy with, that's okay.
Right.
Don't beat yourself up to get the perfect recording. This is an assignment for you to grow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I have that, and then I also have the opposite where I'm getting things that are hard to recognize sometimes, and so we have to get those students to try to step it up a little bit and understand that like especially I was doing a virtual orchestra before the holidays, before break, and holy cow, I had some recordings that were quite in.
right. Yeah. Exactly. So one of the other things I've been doing with the students in Soundtrap is looping,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gained a great appreciation for this art form as well. In doing this a bit on my own, I did buy a loop pedal that I've used a couple of times in the past years, but it's such a performance art. You really got to practice a lot at it to get it
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
I certainly like. Many teachers don't have a lot of extra time. You just sort of sit around and learn to loop.
Right.
Which I did, but actually recently I have. But Soundtrap I think has been a much easier way to do it because you can easily go back and redo something. You can make adjustments with the volume of certain tracks much easier, but you can add drums very easily. And Soundtrap has a huge library of drum beats. Some of the drum beats have harmonic progressions with them. It has a key, but you can also change the key of the harmonic progression. So, a couple of my students would turn in something in a A flat. I'm like, yeah, let's take that down a half step, and G is very nice.
So nice. So much nicer than A flat.
Yeah. So I found the kids were very successful with this, even sort of in the first assignment.
Yeah, what kind of assignments were you giving with having to have them make a loop, or did you give them? What kind of parameters did you give, or what? How did you do it? Just tell us.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I created a couple, and we're using Zoom for our lessons, so I would share the computer sound with them, and I would play something, they would play it back, and that works as long as they're all muted.
Okay.
My sound ends up being with my loop, so that's okay. But one of the hidden sort of benefits of this is that when I tell them to take a solo, in class, what happens when I say, "Hey, who wants to take a solo?"
Freeze.
Nothing,
Crickets.
Right? And so when they're at home in their room, there's no judgment for the solo, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so, I would just leave the track playing. They would, take a solo on their own. And, I would guide them as to which notes sound good. And
Sure.
so their first experience with it was just sort of playing along with me. And then I did ask them to create one. And, the parameters I gave them were that they had to play on at least one of their tracks.
Awesome.
And it had to have 4 different parts. And, one of the parts that I liked the best was, let's see if I can recreate it here. This sound is actually just a metal drinking canister I have in my room. So we used homemade sounds. We used finger snaps. We used claps. I mean, we had kids bringing out secondary instruments, guitars, and
nice,
all kinds of things. So I think the creative aspect of that was a lot of fun, and the kids made it individual. They could also pick a tune that they like and just use that. One of the loops that I did was Ants Marching by Dave Matthews.
Okay.
You might have recognized that opening track from this podcast. The intro music was that Dave Matthews Ants Marching loop that I used for my kids. And it's just a great, easy tune to rock out to. D major, hard to play wrong note, and just really a lot of fun. And you can pick a song that already exists. You can do that Billie Eilish Bad Guy tune, just figure it out. So
nice.
So I gave them, I think, enough parameters, and they were free to do a lot of creative stuff with it.
That sounds awesome. And then, did you have to show them the tools for a long time before you gave the assignment, or did you work on them together and then you set them on their own? Or how did you how much time did you spend teaching the tools?
Right. Yeah. So teaching how to use Soundtrap. I think a lot of us have felt like a first year teacher all over again this year, and that was certainly me teaching Soundtrap. And I think if we ever had to do this again, God forbid, I would be much better at teaching Soundtrap on day one. But I think, I would spend probably 15, 20 minutes each class toward the beginning of the year, teaching them how to use Soundtrap. How to cut and paste, how to trim a clip, all those things. So, but it's pretty intuitive, and I did find a couple students, were ahead of me at times. I go look at their assignments, and they're certainly figuring out how to edit themselves as fast as I'm learning how to do this too. So,
right. That's awesome. And then, I know that your district bought everybody a subscription, but are teachers able to use it, try it, or have some kind of limited use with it without having to pay, or is it something that requires a subscription?
Yeah, there is, I believe, a 1 month free trial for it. So I even before the school year started, I did get a little head start and try to figure some things out in there. So if that's still the way it was earlier this year, there's a 1 month free trial.
That would be neat to try out. And I've done, especially the last spring, I was just trying out a lot of different things to see what was going to work and what wasn't. And so I did a couple different websites that were on trial basis or with my students in a limited capacity. And you see it, and if it's something that really interests you or will really work, then obviously you can invest in it. Our district purchased smart music for everybody, and I'm not the hugest fan, but it was provided, and I was able to make some use of it. At different capacities for different orchestra classes. But so far so good with that, and but Soundtrap does sound pretty awesome for those kind of creative outlets and just recording. It does not do video; it's just simply audio. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the last thing I'll say about Soundtrap, the nice thing is that it does allow me to create an assignment, sort of like in Google Classroom, where you create an assignment and then you give each student an individual assignment.
A copy of it. Yeah.
And that can have my track in it. My more
nice.
Advanced kids, sometimes I'm just giving them a blank one. But and then there's the collaboration tool, which does get a little difficult because students can see each other's work, which I know, we're used to in class. I mean, they can certainly hear each other play, but it is very personal.
Sure.
To put yourself out there like that, so that so far I haven't had any issues with it, but I'm just aware of the fact that it's it can be uncomfortable for kids.
Absolutely. I've done some of that with Flipgrid too, where you're submitting video responses or ideas, whatever. And I have some students who are a little timid and we're a little bit nervous about it, but at the same time, I think for us it was a tool for building community, and this could be similar that way too. And I think it's important for students to hear other kids play, and not necessarily to compare themselves to them, but in some ways maybe a little bit of that kind of sets a standard, and can be inspirational when you have a kid who's a hot shot, and other kids trying to reach to that level. I've had that be program changers before, where you have that one standout and everybody wants to be like them.
Yeah, and speaking of sharing music, I'll go back to one more cool thing about the loop.
Yeah,
is that students would submit it, and then I would pick maybe a handful of them as good examples, and I can play those back in class on
Mm-hmm.
Zoom without anyone knowing whose loop it is.
Great.
And I could say this was a really awesome example of a loop. I mean, yeah, check out this beat. I mean, this is sick. This is great. And then I would ask the student, hey, do you want to be acknowledged?
Right.
And they could chat me if they wanted, and if not, they hopefully just felt really good that they got a shout out in front of everyone, even whether they want the recognition or not.
That's right.
And I found it in a couple of cases that the kids who were getting recognition were not some of the better players. Some of the kids who might not usually get the recognition in class. So I thought that was
that's
a
fantastic.
really good just benefit of that assignment. And we all jammed to them. I'd say, okay, here are the notes that work well with this. Let's do it.
Yeah. I always thought whenever I've done some improv lessons and things that my students who necessarily weren't the best players or the best music readers sometimes had better ears, and they just that was their side of music that they thrived, and it was always impressive, and some of my students who were the hotshot players couldn't improvise at all. They were just give it to me on the page or I don't want it, so that was my lesson for them was we have to balance, we have to be able to be good ear musicians and good visual musicians and be able to read and listen and improvise and be flexible. I think that's really important, for complete musicianship. In the string world, we always get pigeonholed into, we can't improvise, and a lot of us can't, and that's not our strong point. But we all have to work at it, and like I said, I think it's important for students to be able to experience that. I never did in high school. It was always this is the page, and I really didn't start improvising until I was in Las Vegas, and I had this Craig Yancey, our amazing band director. We could play anything, and I was just mesmerized. And he taught me a lot. I learned a lot from him, and so that was a big moment and big changing point in my teaching and my playing too.
Yeah, and really in this musical moment right now, I mean, how many concerts have we all watched, on YouTube or on TV of artists from home? I mean, everyone's sort of in this situation, and the looping is something that I've actually just done for myself for just joy right now because we're not playing.
Yeah, not playing with others. It's something that hoping when everything returns to normal that people will really embrace and continue to want to do and do more. I hope that the kids who were so embracing technology will want to get rid of it and just be like, okay, I don't want to do with a computer anymore or video games. I want to play my instrument. That's what I'm hoping for. It's like a counter reformation.
Yeah, I've thought the same thing, and I hope you're right. I hope there's a yearning for live music, and a yearning to come together and play.
Right.
It's going to be very interesting to see. Yeah, because and I'm sure you're like me too, where like you've watched something on television and people are packed together, and you sort of have this convulsion now. You're like, how could people be that close together? And I think there might be this sort of initial reaction, like, well, I don't know if I want to get back in group things, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. I hope that people want to get back on the baseball field and back in the orchestra and back in the pool and all those things.
I definitely do, and I think a lot of people will. And I know that it's interesting to think about our economy, and there's ups and downs, but I just can't imagine it not just totally going through the roof once people are able to buy tickets to concerts and sporting events and doing this and that in groups and going out to eat. And I mean, we're in for hopefully a really great thing down the road here if we can keep strong and get through all this. And I think it's going to be awesome. So
yeah, I do too.
Hoping 2021 is that year.
Yeah.
So, well, Brad, it's been awesome having you on the show, and really interested for all that you were talking about, and Again, just so great to catch up with you and hear about what's going on. Wish you the best of luck this school year. I know that it'll be challenging, but we'll get through it, and hopefully, again, back to normal very, very soon. But again, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, Chuck. It's been a pleasure, and hope people take ideas from this, and I'm sure Chuck can attest to how many of our things we have, things we do, we've taken from other people, and I think that's the way you become a great teacher. Is you see what works, and you take it, and you steal it, and you tweak it, and occasionally you might have an original idea, but
if you don't,
share
it's
them.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't have an original idea, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I think this pandemic has really brought a lot of our string community together. In a virtual way, but in a way that we're even more giving, and that's why I love doing these podcasts, because I do get some feedback from them, and it's always nice when people say just enjoyed listening to that and it got some great ideas. So that's kind of why we do what we do. Absolutely. But again, thanks so much, and I will definitely be putting Brad's contact info in the description of the podcast. So if you would like to reach out to him, his email will be there. And again, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you all next time on the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Stay safe out there.